Hello and welcome to the Poetry P podcast with me, Patricia. Now before we get started, just a little warning, there is a naughty word in today's episode, so if you have delicate little ears listening nearby, you might want to pop your headphones on. Don't make the mistake I did with my 19-month-old daughter. 30 years later, I'm still blaming the electrician who was rewiring the house. I'm sure it was him. So this is the third and final part of our little series on noun poetry, at least for the time being. And before anything else, I want to say a huge thank you to all the poets you'll hear from today. Some of you wrote brand new poems, especially for the podcast, while others generously shared work that has already appeared in print. Some did both. It all amounts to a wonderful collection. So those are the first two parts of the podcast. There is a third part, which will be self-explanatory when we get to it. I should also explain why the acceptance emails were rather shorter than usual. At the moment, I'm completely swamped with all things Poetry P and life. And something had to give. Rest assured, though, I read every submission with enormous pleasure. And thank you too to everyone who has written to me about this series. It seems many of you have really enjoyed exploring the idea of noun poetry. And that makes me incredibly happy because I genuinely think this approach helps us craft stronger, more concrete poems that invite our readers, or as I called them last week, our co-poets, to participate in the creation of our poems. Before we dive into today's fabulous selection of poems, with the odd bit of analysis along the way, another thank you, this time to Steve Bahr, for reminding me about Lee Gerger's wonderful book, Haiku, A Poet's Guide. It has a few valuable observations on the role of nouns in haiku, and those proved particularly helpful because, surprisingly, there isn't a huge amount written on the subject. I will of course be adding to it, the subject matter that is, when I get a moment to take a breath. The funny thing is, I already have the book, and it was sitting open on my desk, quietly buried beneath several other books. Sometimes I have to admit, reluctantly, that my husband may be right when he suggests I ought to tidy my workspace. I'll come back to another Gerger quotation later, but this one caught my attention. He said, "With nouns, we are most clearly able to convey our experiences without interpretation." And I think I probably want to gently disagree with him. Not a rant, don't worry. On the one hand, he's absolutely right. If we rely on abstract nouns and words like love, hope, peace or beauty, our readers are often left with too much empty space to fill. The poem risks becoming an idea rather than an experience. But concrete nouns, like rose, gate, snow, teacup, carry their own histories and associations. They invite readers into the poem through their senses, allowing meaning to arise naturally, rather than being explained. It's a valuable lesson, and you know what? I would do well to remember that. So perhaps nouns don't remove interpretation after all. Perhaps the best concrete nouns create just enough space for every reader to bring something of themselves to the poem, through their associations with the nouns. And so on that note, let's open the door to your noun verses. Part 1, the unpublished work. Dawn chorus, the baby's cries with the phoebes. Dawn chorus, the baby's cries with the phoebes. Rebecca Upjohn. You know, I had to do a lot of research for this podcast. I had never heard of the Phoebe. But maybe I'll hear and see some of them when I'm on my road trip in the US this year. Must remember my binoculars. Hydrangea clusters. White vases at each pew. Folded flag. Hydrangea clusters. White vases at each pew. Folded flag. Andrea Cisco. When I first read this poem, I wondered if the third line would have been stronger as stars and stripes. But as I mulled it over, I decided that Andrea was spot on with her use of language. Look at the associations we have with the nouns in this poem. Hydrangea clusters. Often we think of them as a flower of remembrance. But we don't know where we are at this point. And in my mind, we're out in the garden, until, of course, Andrea takes us inside, into a church, a place of ritual. But still, we don't know what the ritual could be, especially as Andrea has used white vases, which to me could well be weddings, or equally funerals. Although given my association with hydrangeas, I'd probably sway towards a funeral. And then that last line, folded flag. It clarifies the whole poem for me. It is a funeral, and for me a military one. The folding of a flag is, as someone without any military connections, an alien one for me. But sadly I've seen enough scenes of servicemen and women returning from battle to make that connection. And what I like is that Andrea hasn't tried to manipulate our emotions. We're not told how to feel. But she has created an emotional space for us in her poem, hasn't she? Hydrangea clusters. White vases at each pew. Folded flag. Moonlight. The aroma of honeysuckle. Adolescence. Moonlight. The aroma of honeysuckle. Adolescence. Jeannie Harkema. Last of the Shiraz. In styrofoam cups. Long winter night. Last of the Shiraz. In styrofoam cups. Long winter night. Ralph Matthews. Tree stump. The cuckoo's call, a temple away. Tree stump. A cuckoo's call, a temple away. Vaishnavi Ramaswamy. Snow on snow. The faded outline of my father's boots. Snow on snow. The faded outline of my father's boots. Mark Forrester. City streets. The intersection of ditty buds. City streets. The intersection of ditty buds. Steve Bahr, who has educated me again, this time with a new word. Wake up call. The persistence of a northern flicker. Wake up call. The persistence of a northern flicker. Cynthia Anderson. A buzz in the fingers on this June morning, foxgloves. A buzz in the fingers on this June morning, foxgloves. Seamus O'Connor. Oh my, how Seamus has played with our perception here. Is it a buzz in the poet's fingers? Or, as the camera pulls back on the last line, a buzz in the fingers of the foxgloves? I think we know. And what of this June morning in the second line? We are absolutely present in a moment, and we always will be. Can you feel the sun? I've been watching the bees in my garden this June, and they are so much more active when the sun is out. Member of the team, black ice. Member of the team, black ice. Lorraine Padden. Let that one roam around your brain a few times. Spring showers. A splash of forsythia. Spring showers. A splash of forsythia. Kim Clue. Now Kim opens this poem with a tone-setting fragment, a lovely kigo that to me suggests renewal and freshness. And then she's enhanced that feeling with the words splash and forsythia. Yellow, a dab of it. But now I'm filled with joy and hope. Kim has not told me how to feel, but I feel emotion through the associations I make with the words. The fragrance of rose potpourri, mother's vase. The fragrance of rose potpourri, mother's vase. Susan Andrews. Summer heat. How small the beetle on my chest. Summer heat. How small the beetle on my chest. Melissa Dennison. An answer to a silent wish. Cup of tea. An answer to a silent wish. Cup of tea. Jenny Shepherd. Pigeon poop on the steps of Ganga Ghat this morning. Pigeon poop on the steps of Ganga Ghat this morning. Rupa Anand. Ancient peaks in the beachcomber's palm, milky quartz. Ancient peaks in the beachcomber's palm, milky quartz. Mark Forrester. Two syllables and a full stop. Cuckoo. Two syllables and a full stop. Cuckoo. Tony Williams. Deer in the sun on dandelions. Deer in the sun on dandelions. Alicia Sampson. Isn't this poem just suffused in beauty? The wonderment of seeing a deer, still, standing or sitting in the sun. Then the image of the dandelions, the yellow as in Kim's poem, unspoken. Neither Alicia nor Kim needed to use the word for us to see it. Nothing is happening in this poem, but I am filled with calmness and joy on reading it. Deer in the sun on dandelions. No fixed address, a catnap under cover of the park bench. No fixed address, a catnap under cover of the park bench. Katie Montagna. When I read this, I thought to myself, what an interesting poem, with so much space for us to play in as the co-poet. But crucially, not so much space that we get lost. For me, the poem can be read a couple of ways. The first, which struck me immediately because of the first line, was that the poem was about a homeless person. And taking that idea with me as I travelled along the poem, the noun catnap, rather than having a cosy association, if, for instance, it was applied to my afternoon snooze, the meaning changes. Catnap is now somehow sad. Sad that this person is forced to sleep in the open. Sad that their sleep is made up of catnaps. Perhaps I'm reading too much into this. And then the poem continues to show me this person is seeking shelter under the park bench. If they're sheltering from inclement weather or scorching sunshine, the bench will be inadequate. But what if they're seeking to be unnoticed? And think about all the reasons that might be the case. Oh, my goodness. So sad. But you know, the poem could also be literal. A stray cat having a snooze under the park bench. Well then, it could still be a comment on homelessness, and my previous comments still apply. But it could also be a little tongue-in-cheek humour. Where does the poem take you, fellow poet? No fixed address. A catnap under cover of the park bench. Sudden downburst, the dissonance of garden wind chimes. Sudden downburst, the dissonance of garden wind chimes. Christine Wenck Harrison. First fireworks, a scent of incense in our dreams. First fireworks, a scent of incense in our dreams. Jonathan English. The crowd in front of the Bahr TV, evening breeze. The crowd in front of the Bahr TV, evening breeze. Emile Carla. You know, this poem is just perfect for these days. It's World Cup football time. Yay! And how I mentioned that Crystal Palace is the club with the 6th most club players in the competition. Woohoo! Man United are number 7. Wow. There are not enough emojis in the world to cover that scenario. Anyway, that's not why this poem is in the podcast. I'd like you to think of the connection of the evening breeze to the crowd in front of the TV in the bar. Where do you go? The crowd in front of the Bahr TV, evening breeze. Punctuation. Rolls of hay bales in barren fields. Punctuation. Rolls of hay bales in barren fields. Sangeeta Kalarakal. So that's the end of part 1, and a big thank you again to our wonderful poets for sharing their work with us. But now, before we get on with the poetry, I have to do the bit I dread. If you've been listening for a while, you'll know I'm not terribly comfortable asking for support. I'd much rather spend my time talking about haiku than talking about money. But the truth is that Poetry P, the website, the videos, the workshops, and everything else I do with the team take a great deal of time and expense to produce. And put simply, I can't keep it all going without your help. So if you've enjoyed today's episode, or any of the hundreds that have come before it, and you'd like to help Poetry P flourish, there are lots of ways you can lend a hand. Become a member, buy me a coffee, make a one-off donation through PayPal, tell your poetry friends about the podcast, share an episode on social media, or even volunteer some of your time and skills. Every single contribution, however big or small, makes a difference. Poetry P has always been a community effort, and I'm very, very grateful to everyone who has supported it over the years. I hope, you've helped create a welcoming place where poets from all over the world can learn, write, and grow together. So thank you. Whether you're able to support financially, spread the word, or simply keep listening each week, I appreciate it. Now, shall we get back to some poetry? In part 2, I have some poems that were previously published. Art Gallery, The Fridge Magnet Masterpiece. Art Gallery, The Fridge Magnet Masterpiece. Steve Bahr. Only Human, April 2026. Right, heads up, naughty word coming. Slight morpheme addiction, fuck. Slight morpheme addiction, fuck. Lorraine Padden, and that was in Password Journal of Very Short Poetry, issue 3.2, in June this year. Morphemes are fascinating. I didn't know them before this poem, but it took me down a little bit of a rabbit hole just learning about them. Look them up. Stained teacups, 2 shades, lipstick. Stained teacups, 2 shades, lipstick. Elliot Diamond, The Short of It, on the 12th of the 11th, 2025. The Language of River Rocks, White Water. The Language of River Rocks, White Water. And that's by Richard Tice from the Pan Haiku Review, number 6, Autumn-Winter 2025. Out of Verbs, My Life Sentence, period. Out of Verbs, My Life Sentence, period. And that's another one by Elliot Diamond from our very own Poetry P Journal 225. And now to open part 3, a poem by Sangeeta Kalarakal. Wind chimes and a bird song, one stormy evening. Wind chimes and a bird song, one stormy evening. Sangeeta Kalarakal, Poetry P, Toria Vase episode in July 2023. Now this part 3, is about poetry that we have edited. I think that's the best way to put it. I often look back at poems I've had published and think, you know what, I would change that now. So I asked Sangeeta if she had the chance to go back in time, whether she would change this poem. And this is what she said. That one came out during a thunderstorm. We've been having those these past few days, and the wind chimes are going mad. If I were to change something, it would probably be bird songs in plural. I was just thinking yesterday how the birds wanted to drown out the chimes. So I would maybe change it to wind chimes and bird songs, a stormy evening. Wind chimes and bird songs, a stormy evening. It's a very, very small change, but it does change the musicality of the piece. The impact of the change on that musicality really took me by surprise. I enjoyed the first poem. It wouldn't have made it onto the podcast otherwise. But you know what? I think on reflection, I prefer the new version. And Sangeeta added a little bit more. She said, and it's so true, new experiences and time make one see our older poems in a new light. So, here's a first bit of work for you. Write and tell me which of Sangeeta's poems you prefer and why. I think I've said before that writing haiku is not the easy thing I took it to be when I first started out. You might occasionally get lucky and write a masterpiece straight off the bat. You may be a haiku genius. But please don't be offended. It's highly unlikely. There is a saying attributed to Basho that I've always found humbling and encouraging. It goes something like, he who creates 3 to 5 haiku poems during a lifetime is a haiku poet. He who completes 10 is a master. And it reminds me that truly memorable haiku are rare, and that our task is not to write hundreds of perfect poems, but to keep working at our craft until we create one. And now I have a couple of poems that evolved during this noun process. And I'm doing this with the kind permission of Nina Singh and Susan Andrews to show you how their poems came to fruition. So Nina sent this one for the noun poems. Murky rain on a schoolgirl's grave, black roses. Murky rain on a schoolgirl's grave, black roses. And as I read it, I wondered at the use of murky rain. Remember, I've talked about the judicious use of the adjective. So, I wrote to Nina and asked about it. Of course, she knew exactly what it meant. She'd seen a news item, I believe, which spoke about acid rain and which had described it as murky. So my reaction was, why, Nina, don't you use acid rain? Because acid rain is an absolutely concrete concept. Acid rain on a schoolgirl's grave, black roses. So when I hear acid rain, I think automatically I'm in the realms of pollution, decay and destruction. It's nasty old stuff and runs contrary to the idea of beauty and life. And then Nina's second line deepens that feeling I have. On a schoolgirl's grave. We've switched from an impersonal point of view to an intensely personal image. It's always emotional to see the grave of a person taken too young. And for me at least, there's also a sense of desecration in this one. The acid rain destroying her grave. There's also the juxtaposition of ecological damage and the damage to human life. And then of course we have the final line, black roses. Notice again how the introduction of colour adds to the intensity of the emotion. So, to reiterate what I hope I've been trying to say, this poem shows again that the fewer explanatory words the poet uses, the more space there is for the reader's imagination and emotions to enter the poem. So what do you think? Was Nina right to change the adjective from murky to acid? Murky rain on a schoolgirl's grave, black roses. Or acid rain on a schoolgirl's grave, black roses. And now one from Susan Andrews, with a bit of homework for you. So this is the poem that came in originally. A worn book in wrinkled hands, evensong. A worn book in wrinkled hands, evensong. And to be honest, there's absolutely nothing wrong with this poem. I felt it may be a little top-heavy in adjectives, and I wrote to Susan and we explored what we could do. We also looked at the form, because originally this is a 3-line form. But Susan changed it to 1 line. Evensong, time-worn book in wrinkled hands. Evensong, time-worn book in wrinkled hands. Now, it still has the number of adjectives, but the change to time-worn and the 1 line, I think, has made a difference. Time-worn can now relate to the service of evensong and suggests history as well as spirituality and ritual. But it also refers to the book, which enhances that feeling of history, of age. And Susan has doubled down on that idea with wrinkled hands. So now we decided we'd like to turn this poem over to you. Which version do you like best? Or do you have another version which would stay true to Susan's poem? Please email me and I'll share them with Susan. So here you go. Which one or something different? A worn book in wrinkled hands, evensong. Or evensong, time-worn book in wrinkled hands. Remember back in the first of this series, I said I would join in the challenge with you. So I'm going to give you this poem and its predecessors so you can see how I've worked on it. It's going to go and live in my notebook with my other unpublished work until I'm, how shall I say it? Probably just say until I'm happier with it. So the first version. Storm in the valley, my neighbour's daughter on her swing, red shoes in her sky. And I tried this. Storm in the valley, my neighbour's girl on her swing, red shoes in her sky. I really like that storm in the valley line because it suggests distance, something coming towards you. But perhaps it doesn't have the urgency of danger that I was looking for. And just because I know that we can see a storm coming by looking out of our back windows down the valley, a reader wouldn't make that connection. So I moved on. Distant lightning, my neighbour's daughter on her swing, red shoes in her sky. Distant lightning, next door's girl on her swing, red shoes in her sky. So, I'm happier now with the distant lightning in the first line, but I'm troubled by the repetition of her, as I was with the first version. Is there a way round it? And which version of the second line works lyrically for me? Do I prefer next door's or my neighbour? And which to use, girl or daughter? It has implications on length of line. Does that matter? I ask myself. I think no, personally. So, moving on. Next version, or versions. Distant lightning. Next door's daughter on the swing. Red shoes in her sky. Or, distant lightning. My neighbour's daughter on the swing. Red shoes in her sky. Yes, I've decided I prefer daughter. And the current final version that I'll live with for a while is distant lightning. Next door's daughter on the swing. Red shoes in her sky. If you have any thoughts, do share them with me. You know how. Thank you so much for being with me today. I hope you've enjoyed this little mini-series on noun poetry. I'm incredibly grateful to everyone who took the time to write for the podcast, and to those who shared poems that have already found homes in journals and anthologies. If you didn't have a go this time, I hope you're inspired to write some noun poetry of your own. I'd love to see it appear in Poetry P or elsewhere, so do keep me posted on how you get on. After all, as Lee Gerger reminds us in Haiku, A Poet's Guide, nouns are the meat of haiku. Now, a few jobs for you before next week. Please send me your thoughts on Susan's poem. We're both waiting with bated breath to hear what you make of it. I'll put the different versions in the show notes, so have a read and let us know your ideas. And while we're on the subject of ideas, if listening to me wittering on sparks a topic you'd like me to explore in a future episode, tell me. I always love hearing what you're curious about. You might also like to comment on Nina's poem or my poem. Don't be shy. Send those thoughts to us. And don't forget this month's video prompt either. Lakshmi is waiting patiently for your poems. Just remember though, if your poem isn't in the comments under the YouTube video, it hasn't been submitted. I'm still receiving poems by email, and I'm afraid I simply don't have the time to reply individually and redirect them anymore. I feel dreadful just deleting them, but fair warning, they will not make it to the selection process. So what's happening next week? It's the video prompt again, this time May's poems, curated by Neetu Yumnam. And some bonus poems too. I'm already looking forward to spending another half hour or so in your company. So until then, keep trusting those wonderful nouns to do some heavy lifting, but more importantly, keep writing. And check out the show notes. Send me your thoughts, Nina's, Susan's, my poem, or indeed on anything else that's been sparked by today's episode or the previous two. Ciao!